Good day, everybody. I hope you're all doing great. Today I am reviewing these two books by Paul Stanley, Modeling and Painting Fantasy Figures and Modeling and Painting Science Fiction Miniatures, published by Crowwood Press. As usual, in the interest of full disclosure, this video is not sponsored or solicited, and I bought these with my own money. I do know Paul and I think he's a great guy, so bear that in mind over the course of this review. Let's get the big question out of the way first. Are these books any good? Oh boy, are they ever. These are the books I wish I had 30 years ago when I was getting started. They are squarely aimed at beginners, but there's still a lot of information there that a crusty old sod like me found useful. And they're pegged with a ton of excellent photos for inspiration. You don't even need to take my word for it. Both these books have forewords by Rick Priestley. Now, I don't know Mr. Priestley personally, but his work filled up quite a large chunk of my adolescence. He has changed the world of tabletop wargaming and mentored some epic game designers. So if he was happy to give these books his blessing, I believe that's a gold standard recommendation right there. With that out of the way, let's have a look at what's inside and whether one or maybe even both of these books are right for you. The opening chapters of both books go over some basics, so there is a lot of overlap. Things like the kinds of tools you need, basic color theory, commonly available scales and so on. However, there are two sections that are especially valuable, which go over the properties of different types of materials and adhesives. This is pretty foundational stuff, but I know some people, even experienced modelers, who use, say, superglue for plastic-on-plastic bonds and so on. These sections explain in simple, clear language what glues and material are available, and what works really well with what. Both books have a chapter about model assembly and conversion, and this is where the two start to diverge a little. Both books cover model preparation, although the sci-fi version goes into a lot more detail about refining resin miniatures for assembly. Again, foundational stuff, but I still found useful material here. For example, gap filling after priming. I've had cases where I only saw gaps after priming and just decided to live with that, because for some reason I never thought to fill them after the first prime. It's weird how the brain works sometimes, so when I read that I was kicking myself for ignoring the simplest solution. We all get a bit set in our ways, so going over someone else's workflow like this can be enlightening. There are also brief sections on sculpting small accessories in both books. This is more detailed in the fantasy book, where you're shown how to make things like pouches and backpacks. These sections are brief out of necessity, as more detailed sculpting tutorials would take several books on their own. There is still enough to get you started, and I say this out of experience because this kind of modification is how I learned to sculpt years ago. Besides, thanks to the wonders of modern technology, if you want to learn more about sculpting, you can visit Paul's YouTube channel. I'll drop a link in the description. He makes some excellent tutorials on the subject. The painting chapters in both books go over different textures and materials that are commonly portrayed in miniatures of each genre. Both start from the absolute basics of priming, base coating, layering, dry brushing and washing. Both cover flesh and cloth, but the fantasy book goes into detail about things such as bone, fur and feathers, while the sci-fi book goes into greater depth about panel lining and plasma glow. Like everything else in the books, the explanations are very straightforward and beginner-friendly. The fantasy book has great advice about freehanding patterns and symbols, while the sci-fi book has a chunker of a chapter on weathering. I think some of the advice given there would be useful in the fantasy book as well, as some of us like big gory monsters. But either way, I think there's out in both books to keep a budding hobbyist busy. Both books round off with a chapter about basic miniatures. Again, this is very genre-specific, and they go into some detail about decorating everything from basic troop bases to more elaborate ones. Overall, I think that even if these books are meant for beginners, people of any level of experience will get some value out of them. Now, if you collect only fantasy miniatures or only sci-fi miniatures, the one you go for should be self-evident. If you get both books, you will find there's some redundancy in the basics, but my opinion is that there's enough difference in the details to be worth the cost of the kit. But that's just my opinion, let me know what you think. And do hop over to Paul's channel, there's a massive amount of miniature goodness there. I'll catch you around, but in the meantime, have a great week. Bye!